Summa scholars, welcome to the Daily Summa. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd, the fourth week of Lent. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mr. Craig.
Do we want to tell the people why we were a little late?
I slept in a little bit. I got out of bed at 7:15.
Always a good reason. I thought about sleeping in. I thought about it, but I didn't. I don't know why. But today would have been a good day to do it, though. We would have been together, unified in our sleeping tardiness. So, how was did you celebrate the feast? I know that the feast of Mary of Egypt is kind of my thing, but did you do anything for it?
I did a little something, actually. Yeah. We went over to Chesterton's.
Mm-hmm.
Hang out with Gage and the boys. You know, there's a couple guys from out of town. A guy named Ryan and a guy named Jesse. They were working over with the St. Paul Center, doing some production stuff or whatever.
Okay.
Good guys. Got to hang out with them. I had a beautiful cigar. Me and Gage went over and got some root beer floats. It was a good time, man.
That sounds like a nice time.
Yeah, it was good.
Little root beer float. I was going to go to that place that has the Tuesday cheeseburger deal. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, but my man Joe does. And I instead opted to relive my Houston roots and go to I want to say Tex-Mex restaurant, but it's not Tex-Mex. And it's not Mexican, but it's, American Mexican. And there are actual Spanish-speaking Mexicans kind of running the place, so the food is somewhat, I'm among my areas of snobbery, as Pecos Hank tried to point out in the video. Pecos Hank has a YouTube channel, over 1 million subscribers, because it's awesome. It's a storm chasing channel. And if you care to look, he made a video with he and I going to watch the eclipse of 2000, whatever it was. So if you type in Craig Kinsey, Pecos Hank, eclipse, it'll come up. And he tried to make a fool of me, which is not super hard, I guess, as a coffee snob. Well, another snobbery would be Tex-Mex or whatever. Houston, where I hail from, has the most restaurants per capita of any city in America, even New York. Houston is a big food city, obviously close to the border, and a lot of amazing Tex-Mex restaurants where they make everything for real. It doesn't come out of a can. This place, this place up north, little cannage. I asked the woman I was at the bar, sitting at the bar for the feast of Mary of Egypt, and I asked the woman, "Tienes mole casero?" And she's like, "No." Do you have any mole made in house, like homemade in house? She's like, "Tienes mole casado?" No. Even their regular sauce isn't made in house. I would be shocked if it was, from the way it looked and tasted. But anyway, it was nice to go have a little Tex-Mex and a little margarita. Con sal. So it was a nice time. It was beautiful. The Lord was generous to me. The Holy Spirit was present. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt great love for everybody in the room, and closeness to Mary of Egypt. There's a lot to think about with saints like that. Mary lives out in the desert, Joe, for like 40 years or something. Not around any other people, and apparently eating almost nothing. There's a few saints who've done that, where there are saints that they say that the only thing they ate was the Eucharist for like years or something. I mean, that gets on the edge of belief. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying
Right.
God can't do it. Of course, God can do it.
I mean, as far as the material goes, it's kind of miraculous, you know.
That would be a hui shtickle miracle, yeah.
Right.
A nace, as they say in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a nace. But the reading today from the Office of Readings is about Israel moving through the desert, and the only thing they ate was manna.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, they complain.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. Rabbis like to point out that it says the foreign element among them began to complain. A lot of Gentiles, Christians, don't comprehend this. The rabbis and the Jews are very aware of this. There's some things we miss. When you split people up, when Jacob and Esau split, we're all missing certain things, as we talked about also with all cultures. Japanese culture, their honoring of the elders, which you could learn from Joe, and their honoring of order and all that stuff. There's things that we all miss when we separate ourselves from each other. And one of the things that Christians miss is, it's there, it's written in plain sight, but it's not part of the consciousness. It says the foreign element among them began to complain, to the extent that even the Israelites began to complain that they only were eating manna. And they started wanting to go back to, it says they could catch fish without number. And the leeks and onions and garlic. It just sounded good reading it. I don't know if you've ever made a good big salmon, put some butter on there and leeks, garlic, some spices on there.
I'm a fish guy.
Well, I think we had this discussion. I'll have to make you some fish and you see if I can change your mind. But the point being, I mean, you can sympathize with Israel. I mean, first of all, it's the foreign element among them that's coming out of Egypt with them that Moses wanted to bring. But that's why when God says him, he says, your people that you brought out of Egypt to Moses. And they're always going back and forth on each other, the Lord and Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of this reading this morning from the Divine Office, Moses is really giving it to the Lord. Like, I don't know why you're doing this to me. Why do I have to deal with this people? It's too much for me. It's too heavy. Why? And then he says, why don't you do me the favor of killing me right now? Just do me the favor.
Sometimes I want to say that to you. That makes sense.
Oh, Joe. No, you don't. Joe, we haven't got to that point yet. Oh, it's so funny. But I understand. Just eating. Obviously, I'm connecting these two things. This is a image of these saints that only ate the Eucharist, which would be like the manna in the desert, the mahana, the what is it? To eat the what is it? Cardinal Newman wrote a poem before he became Catholic about not looking forward, not seeing what's coming next, but only taking each step. Not knowing what's going to be happening in your life. That is the mahana, the what is it? And we are asked to take the humble little portion of just the next step. That's what we're invited to. That's what the scriptures are trying to express to us in this journey through the desert. Joe, let's move St. Thomas's skull through the desert. That,
Bam.
boop, as you can see, it's very little movement. And if you were to read it in the scripture, it just says, and Israel moved from Tirah to Keherath. I can't remember exactly what it is. But as I've said before, we've just had a long list of, and Israel moved from here to there, and Israel moved from here to there. Boring. The grind. We're in the middle grind state. And not only is is nothing happening at each of these places. Now the movement is very little. You're just kind of moving over a little bit. Not much going on, folks. This is a example of what life is. The rhythm of life is all written there for you if you just submit to it and understand. But we don't. Okay. What else do we have? Oh, I'm going to offer up this study today I didn't think about it ahead of time. I will offer up today's study to H-Town for all my old friends and fans back in Houston. Okay, let's get going. Top of the page, 129. We're at question 13, article 5, and we're moving right into the on the contrary. But just to keep things shipshape here on this Beaver Galleon, I will start at the top of the page where we ended yesterday. Therefore, God is homogeneous with creatures, homogeneous, and thus a word may be applied univocally to God and to creatures. Of course, that's the end of an objection, which, if you don't know, means he's wrong. That was old Shimon. Okay, so here comes the right answer from Mr. Thomas Aquinas. Sed contra, whatever is predicated of various things under the same name, but not in the same sense, is predicated equivocally. He always just starts with the definition. Philosophy is about defining things and making distinctions. But no name belongs to God in the same sense that it belongs to creatures. For instance, wisdom in creatures is a quality, but not in God. It's worth pausing on that for a second. If you say that I'm wise, like you do to me all the time, Jeff, if you say that Craig is wise, that's a quality that I possess that at a time in the past I did not. It's dubious whether how much quality or quantity, you could even say, of wisdom do I have right now. Well, we don't have a really good measurement of it, but the point is it's limited, it's finite, and it grows, or it could decrease. I could start making stupid decisions, and then my eyes would be clouded over, and all I would want was, I would start, instead of moving my whole life in order towards the final telos, which is the beatific vision, the unification of justice and charity, I would start orienting my whole life slowly towards getting women. That's probably what would happen. And then I'd start making even more stupid decisions, and there'd be a compounding. Actually, I'd orient it towards getting them to want me. I never chased women. I think I only did that once. But anyway, that's what my arrogant self would do. So it's a quality that God is gracing me with right now in my life, some wisdom. But for him, he is. It's not a quality. It's not something that grows or decreases in him. It is his quiddity, his nature. Well, the word wisdom points at what his nature is, as Thomas has said over and over, and we'll probably say again. Now, a different genus changes an essence, since the genus is part of the definition, and the same applies to other things. Definitions, as we talked about the fence going around the horse's paddock here, it defines the border. Definitions are limiting factors. That's why you don't have a genus in God or a definition. He is nothing. He is no thing, but he is being. Therefore, whatever is said of God and of creatures is predicated equivocally, not univocally. There's some difference. It's not the same thing. Further, here we go, Thomas, getting a little long-winded. I never do that. Further, God is more distant from creatures than any creatures are from each other. But the distance of some creatures makes any univocal predication of them impossible, as in the case of those things which are not in the same genus. Therefore, much less can anything be predicated univocally of God and creatures. Apples and oranges. If you can't have a univocal thing with the thing. That's very sloppy. If you can't have a univocal uniting of apples and oranges as the same thing, then how much more can you not have any univocal uniting with creatures and God? And so only equivocal predication can be applied to them. I answer that. Let's see what we got on more of a rational base, I guess. I didn't see a lot of argument from authority on the contrary, but Thomas, we're going to give him a break every now and then. It's a big book, a lot of stuff. I answer that univocal predication is impossible between God and creatures. The reason of this is that every effect which is not an adequate result of the power of the efficient cause receives the similitude of the agent not in its full degree, but in a measure that falls short, so that what is divided and multiplied in the effects resides in the agent simply and in the same manner. As for example, the sun, by exercise of its one power, produces manifold and various forms in all inferior things. Down comes the sun, down comes the rain. They are one thing, water, fire, heat, but up comes roses, plum trees, grass, dandelions, apple trees. Up comes little raccoons and babies from humans, all coming from the sun. If it wasn't there, we would all die. Manifold and various forms come forth from this one sun. In the same way, as said in the preceding article, all perfections existing in creatures divided and multiplied pre-exist in God unitedly. It's one thing. It's almost inaccurate to say unitedly because it is one thing. Just as long as you're not picturing like a puzzle, that's not good either. What I'm trying to say is, it's not like there's a bunch of pieces in God and then he divides them up and lets us share them. He is one. And then he creates this world in which he makes numerous semiotic representations that are adequated to our mind, that are able to eventually show us an intuition or movement towards what that one is. There's a separation between God and the creation. Even though, as Teresa of Avila says, one day you will see that everything is done in him. It is all unified, but there is a transcendence of God that is different from creation. Thus, when any term expressing perfection is applied to a creature, it signifies that perfection distinct in idea from other perfections. As, for example, by the term wise applied to man, we signify some perfection distinct from a man's essence. My essence, your essence, Joe, is not wise or wisdom, but we can have wisdom applied to our essence, which is humanness, and the suppositum is Craig or Joe, and distinct from his power and existence, and from all similar things. Whereas when we apply it to God, we do not mean to signify anything distinct from his essence, or power, or existence, when we say the word wise. I think this is very clear. Does this seem fairly clear to you, Joe?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. Thus, also this term wise, applied to man, in some degree, circumscribes and comprehends the thing signified. Whereas this is not the case when it is applied to God, but it leaves the thing signified as incomprehended and as exceeding the signification of the name. It's what Thomas is really trying to hit home with over and over again. You could be confused by how not confusing this is. You could be turned around by how straightforward this is. You could be puzzled by how unpuzzling this is. He keeps repeating the same thing over and over, guys. He's just wanting you to know, as contrasted to Moses Maimonides and others, that God's essence is not so transcendent that we can't say anything at all about it. That's what he's trying to get you from, because what that'll do is end up making a too great of a break between heaven and earth. And that's what Satan is wanting to do. He's wanting to divorce heaven and earth. God is so far above us, we can't even get at it, can't say anything about him. So how can you have a love relationship with something that's so that distant from you? Remember what this is all geared towards. Lover beloved language. This is all geared towards Song of Solomon. That the lover and the beloved should come together at the end. And that's what this whole world is leading towards, a marriage between mankind and God. And that is the whole reason that God entered into the Virgin Mother's womb, that he might unite with us. So Thomas is wanting to caution you that we can get to know our beloved. When we use the word good, we can start to know what good means through our coffee, our morning breakfast, our watching the sunrise, our marital relations. That's the preeminent way in which God has created an image of what he is within his essence and nature. So that's why he's repeating this over and over. Okay. Hence, it is evident that the term wise is not applied in the same way to God and to man. The same rule applies to other terms. Hence, no name is predicated univocally of God and of creatures. He's also wanting to caution you from saying, if I know wisdom, then I know what God's wisdom is. He's trying to ride the line between these two extremes. One, God is so far off that you can't even get to know him or talk about him. Two, power, wisdom. I know what that is because I know my power and wisdom, and it's the same with God. He's just like super like that. It's like what the atheists think we mean. He's like Superman. That's also wrong. Those two things are wrong. When we say wisdom, power, knowledge, pleasure, we are getting at something that's in the essence of God, but it's not the same as it is with us. We are only a portion or a sharing in something that is ineffable. Neither, on the other hand, are the names applied to God and creatures in a purely equivocal sense, as some have said. Because if that were so, it follows that from creatures nothing could be known or demonstrated about God at all. Sorry, I stole Thomas's thunder. I didn't know he was going to say it straight out again. For the reasoning would always be exposed to the fallacy of equivocation. Such a view is against the philosophers who proved many things about God. Equivocation is you can't say anything about it. There's nothing like, the two things are nothing alike. And so he's saying that would go against being able to say anything about God, which he says here the philosophers have all done, would be impossible because of equivocation, the fallacy of equivocation. So we have to say that you can say something about God that's in some way accurate. Such a view is against philosophers who proved many things about God, and also against the apostle, who says the invisible things of God are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Therefore, it must be said that these names are said of God and creatures in an analogous sense, i.e., according to proportion. Surprise, surprise. Analogies, metaphors, that's why he went through all of that at the beginning of the book. Now, names are thus used in two ways, either according as many things are proportionate to one. Thus, for example, healthy, predicated of medicine and urine. You hear that one, Joe? We got a little potty humor.
I mean, yeah, if you say so.
Do you think that they grinned when the students and everything, he says, when Thomas says, for example, healthy, predicated of medicine and urine?
At least one.
Yeah. Remember,
At least one.
this is something I want to keep going back to. We're at the Côte de Latran. We're at the Latin Quarter, the seedy part of France, sitting around with some Dominicans that probably stink from having been walking mendicant and not taking plenty of showers. They probably stink. They're sitting on bales of straw out in the street. That's how these men studied back then. They're studying Aristotle, which popes had condemned. They're studying dangerous books. They're studying Muslims, Avicenna. They're studying the Jewish rabbi Maimonides. These are edgy men. And if you think that they're not like amused by Thomas's, I'm just saying, don't be Puritans. It's gotten into the church. This kind of, if someone would read something like this and they would read it like in a straightforward, serious way. Thus, for example, healthy predicated of medicine and urine in relation into guys. Okay. Anyway, and he's going to explain further why he's bringing piss into the picture. Healthy predicate. By the way, the King James Version uses the word piss. That used to not be thought of as a bad word. Did you know that, Joe?
I did.
Yeah. Okie doke. Predicated of medicine and urine in relation in proportion to health of a body, of which the former is the sign and the latter the cause. So you can have the word healthy, and the word healthy applies to the medicine. That it's what makes you, it's a healthy medicine. Or urine, which shows did the medicine work. You can look at the urine as a sign if the body is healthy or not. So you can use that term in two different ways. Or according as one thing is proportionate to another. Thus, healthy is said of medicine and animal, since medicine is the cause of health in the animal body. And in this way, some things are said of God and creatures analogically, and not in a pure equivocal or in a pure univocal sense. For we can name God only from creatures. We come to know spiritual things through the senses. That's bedrock beginning one of Aristotelian thought, different from Platonic thought. By the way, I heard something the other day that was so Platonic, and it was coming out of like Christian teaching, but they didn't realize how Platonic it was. Oh, it was some atheist who was saying Christians believe that the body is bad, evil body, and they've got to break out of it. I'm like, no, that's actually Platonism and a heresy. But thank you very much, ignorant atheist. No wonder you're an atheist. You're dumb as a brick. Thus, whatever is said of God and creatures is according to the relation of a creature to God and its principle and cause. By the way, whenever I put people down like that, tongue in cheek, people. I'm an idiot too. Tongue in cheek. But still, that was a stupid thing that atheist said, and very uninformed. Wherein all perfections of things pre-exist excellently. Now this mode of community of idea is a mean between pure equivocation and simple univocation. For in analogies, the idea is not, as it is in univocals, one and the same. Yet it is not totally diverse, as is equivocals, but a term which is thus used in a multiple sense signifies various proportions to some one thing. It's what I said before about comparing God to a lion. You have to be able to see what aspect of lion is that analogy meaning. When we say God's like a lion, we don't mean God has 4 feet or that God has a mane. We're talking, you have to be able to discern what aspect of the analogy is being put forward. And that's something many people can't do, and therefore say many stupid things. Thus, healthy applied to urine signifies the sign of animal health. Let's take a look at that urine. He looks like he's pretty healthy. It's a sign of health. And applied to medicine, the word healthy signifies the cause of the same health. The medicine is healthy. It causes the person to get better. Okay, reply to objection 1. He's going to go straight to these gents. Although equivocal predications must be reduced to univocal, still in actions, the non-univocal agent must precede the univocal agent. For the non univocal agent is the universal cause of the whole species. As, for instance, the sun is the cause of the generation of all men, whereas the univocal agent is not the universal efficient cause of the whole species. Otherwise, it would be the cause of itself, since it is contained in the species, but is a particular cause of this individual which is placed into the species by way of participation. Therefore, the universal cause of the whole species is not an univocal agent, and the universal cause comes before the particular cause. But this universal agent, whilst it is not univocal, nevertheless is not altogether equivocal. Otherwise, it could not produce its own likeness, but rather it is to be called an analogical agent. As all univocal predications are reduced to one first non-univocal analogical predication, which is being. Woo! That was a mouthful. And I'll admit, I got lost. I got lost yesterday when I was studying it too. The sun, different than the species and genre that's being kept alive by it. The sun is different. There is such thing as univocal. Everything is one thing. Fire is univocal, is within itself fire as a whole. Then there's equivocal. There's apples and oranges, two different things. Or we could even say apples and ham, two very different things. Equivocal. And then analogous. There's something in it that's different, and there's something in it that's the same. So it kind of rides the line between univocal and equivocal. But all this being comes from the one proto being, or the one preeminent being, which is God, and all things flow down forth from it and are divided, but have their source in God. Generally, that's what's being said. I'm sure you could pick this apart for the exact preciseness, but I can't do that right now. Good thing we're just doing a flyover. Reply to objection dose. The likeness of the creature to God is imperfect, for it does not represent one and the same generic thing. Again, folks, we're staring at our beloved's hands. You don't need to be St. Thomas Aquinas to understand that. The likeness of the creatures to God is imperfect. Yeah, we know that. Reply to objection 3. God is not the measure proportioned to things measured. Hence, it is not necessary that God and creatures should be in the same genus. That's also what I said before. You can't get atheistic in your thinking and think like they do, which is that God is just a superhuman. Whatever attributes we have, God has it in super duper way. The actual fact is, every ability or every aspect that we have of wisdom, power, love, pleasure, even though they can point to God and we do know something about him, he is still wholly other and transcendent. So it's a completely different genus. That's the important point. And I keep repeating it, but Thomas keeps repeating it. And we'll probably repeat it again tomorrow. He is not so unknown that we can't say anything about him. We can say something about him regarding analogies. And also, we have things in us that are in some way likened unto the divine essence. Wisdom, pleasure, goodness. But it is still, the essence is still transcendent and unable to be fully comprehended by us. He is wholly other. The arguments adduced in the contrary sense prove indeed that these names are not predicated univocally of God and creatures, yet they do not prove that they are predicated equivocally. We've come to the end of the page. Tomorrow is Article 6. Let's see what we're getting into. Whether names predicated of God are predicated primarily of creatures. Of course, I think we know what the answer is going to be. Joe, how do we do on time?
Pretty good, 34.
Ooh, I like it. Anything else to say?
Not on my end, my man.
I think I'm going to REI today. You know REI?
I think I should, but I don't think I know.
REI is that outdoors shop, that store for outdoors stuff. And it's
Oh, I don't
also
know.
yeah. And it's also what do they call that? Where you're partners, when you become part of REI, you're partners in the business and
Oh, nice.
whatever. Yeah. And you get discounts. So
Cool. It's cool.
I have the REI card and I need to go get a duffel. I've decided to move some of my stuff that I keep in my cargo hold from a big plastic clunky box into another duffel bag. That way, when you open it, it's even more beautiful. Like all my stuff is very ordered when you open that cargo hold. And I have 2 duffel bags and then this big plastic box. I'm going to have it to where when you open it up, it's just beautifully put, ordered, univocal REI duffel bags. That's what I think I'm going to do today. And then the fast is beginning. Oh gosh, coming into more water fast days, Joe. You know what, everybody? Have a wonderful closing out of your Lent, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow.